I think technology is very important. It is necessary for our life. Honestly, technology is really important. It's something we can't live without these days. Did you hear the difference? Both examples were correct English, but only one sounded natural like a native English speaker. In this video, I'm going to show you 8 simple tips to help you sound more like a native English speaker in IELTS speaking and improve your band score. But before we start, if you're preparing for the IELTS test, make sure you check out our full Band 7 Plus preparation course because it's going to teach you everything you need to know to get a Band 7 Plus in all 4 parts of the test. It's taught by me, an IELTS examiner, so you know you're learning things that actually work in the real test. The link is in the description below if you're interested. All right, so let's get started. The first thing we need to talk about is what a native speaker actually is. Well, a native speaker is someone who has spoken a language since early childhood as their first language. Now, the next question is, why should you sound like a native speaker? Why should you learn to sound like a native speaker? Well, I hear a lot of people saying that they don't want to sound like a native English speaker. And in my opinion, that's not a very good attitude to have because there are so many benefits of sounding like a native speaker, especially for IELTS. The main one is you'll be easy to understand. If you pronounce the sounds of English correctly and you have good stress and good intonation, the examiner is going to understand you very, very clearly, and he or she is not going to have to work really hard to understand you. And obviously, if you are effortless, if you are easy to understand, that's going to mean you're going to score very high for pronunciation. The next thing is you'll be able to communicate your meaning more clearly. You'll be able to express your ideas in a way that is smooth and easy for the listener to understand your meaning. So you'll be able to use higher level vocabulary and grammar, and you'll be able to explain your ideas much better than if you were speaking like someone who's got very poor English. Now, the third thing is you'll be able to improve your IELTS band score. For speaking, the examiner thinks about 4 things: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. And if you speak like a native speaker and know what you need to do to score high, you're probably going to do quite well in all of those 4 areas. Now, I'm not saying you have to speak exactly like a native speaker. No, I'm just saying that you should aim to sound more natural, more like a native speaker, because this is going to give you many, many benefits when it comes to your IELTS speaking score. Okay, let's get into the first tip for the day. Have a look at this paragraph here. Just quickly pause the video and think about what's wrong with this paragraph. Well, if you had a chance to think about it, you would have noticed that there are some issues, there are some problems. There are some problems at the start with the phrase, I think internet is important, and when it comes to people not use. For the first part, there is a missing article. We need to say, I think the internet is important. But again, we're missing something else. We need to say an important part of our lives. So we're missing 2 articles at the start here. And for the people not use, well, that's missing a do. It should be people do not use it responsibly. So this is the first tip. Do not miss important words. If you want to sound like a native English speaker, you cannot miss little words like this. So for this situation, the issue is obviously we forgot the and the a, and these words are articles, and we also forgot the do, which is an auxiliary verb. That just means it's a helper verb. And they are the 2 most common types of words that learners forget. articles, a, an, and the, and auxiliary verbs. So for example, has, have, do, or does. Apart from that, there are some other things that English learners often forget. To be verbs are often forgotten as well. So for example, instead of saying he is tired, students will just say he tired. Another one is pronouns. So instead of saying something like don't buy it, some students will say something like don't buy, and then they will not have a subject at the end of a pronoun. And finally, the last one is prepositions. For example, some students might say something like, I'm looking my phone, instead of saying, I'm looking at my phone. Now, please note the two biggest ones would have to be the first two, articles and auxiliary verbs. So now I'm just going to very quickly give you the basics of how to use articles. So when you're thinking about articles, you need to think about two things. You need to think about, are you talking about something general? Now, when I say general, I mean the speaker doesn't know which thing. It could be anything. It's not specific. Or are you talking about something specific? Does the speaker know which thing you're talking about? Is it a specific thing? Then you need to think about, are you talking about one thing or are you talking about more than one thing? Let's pretend you're talking about a singular general thing. Well, most of the time here, you would use a or an. So for example, give me a pen. If you're talking about something specific, something that both the speaker and the listener know which one, well, then you would say the. So for example, give me the shirt. Now, when it comes to plural, so two or more things, if you're talking about something general, you don't need to have an article. And that includes if you're talking about a plural noun or a non-countable noun, an uncountable noun. For example, give me information. So here we don't need an article because information is an uncountable noun. Now, if you are talking about something specific, you need to say the. Now, this applies to plural nouns and uncountable nouns. For example, give me the bottles. Now, let's move on to the second tip. I'm going to quickly read these two sentences for you. Think about why it doesn't sound natural. I usually get up around 7, and the first thing I do is make a cup of coffee. Then I check my messages and scroll through social media for a few minutes before I start getting ready for work. Well, the problem here is there's no connected speech, and that is our second tip. Learn and use connected speech. You may have heard about connected speech before, but what is it? Well, connected speech is the way native speakers join words together in natural, fluent speech. It often means some sounds are linked, changed, or even dropped or removed, so that speaking feels smoother, faster, and more natural. Now let me show you some examples from these two sentences we looked at before. So instead of saying get up, we'd say get up. Get up. I usually get up around 7. Get up. For and, we would say and the first thing, and the first thing. For thing and I would come together and we'd say thing I. The first thing I. Thing I. When it comes to do is, we would add a W sound in between the two words so it's easier to pronounce. Do is. Do is. So listen, the first thing I do is. Do is. Make a, well, these sounds would come together. We'd say maker, maker. And cup of would become cuppa, cuppa. So let me read that first sentence one more time, and I'm going to use connected speech. I usually get up around 7, and the first thing I do is make a cup of coffee. Now, with then I, again, we would join those two together. Okay, then I. For a, we would join those two words together as well, and we'd say for a. So now let me read this again in just natural native speaker English. I usually get up around 7, and the first thing I do is make a cup of coffee. Then I check my messages and scroll through social media for a few minutes before I start getting ready for work. So they were just a few basic examples. If you really want to learn connected speech, here are some things that you can do. The first one is listen to native speakers. See how they link words instead of saying each one separately. Okay, native speakers often join and link words together. Next one, shadow short clips. So listen to native speakers and copy what you hear. Copy the speed, copy the way they join sounds, copy the rhythm, copy the intonation. Just listen and copy exactly what you hear. Next one, record yourself speaking. This is really, really important. If you don't record yourself, you probably don't know what you really sound like. So record yourself, listen back, and check if your speech sounds smooth or does it sound too separated. The next thing is learn common connections. So for example, we don't say go out, we say go out. We add a W between the go and the out. Turn off, we join those together. Turn off the light, turn off the TV. Kind of, we would say kind of. So the of and the kind, they join together, and the of changes the way it's pronounced. So we don't say kind of, no, we say kind of. And the last one here is want to. So we wouldn't say want to, we'd say wanna. The next thing you might be thinking is, why is connected speech so important for a high pronunciation score? Well, if you look at the band descriptors, a band 9 says flexible use of features of connected speech. So if you're aiming for a really high band score in your speaking, you need to learn connected speech. Let's move on to the next tip now. So have a look at this paragraph on the screen. Let me read it to you and just think about, again, why doesn't it sound natural? I think technology has changed the way we live. It makes life easier in many ways. It can also be distracting. People spend a lot of time on their phones. They sometimes forget to talk to each other face to face. Well, the answer is the linking is very poor. There are no conjunctions. So a conjunction is a word that joins two things together, and there are no discourse markers. And that is tip number 3, use discourse markers. But what exactly is a discourse marker? Well, it's a word or a phrase that connects ideas and makes your speech flow more smoothly. They help you organize what you say, and they show the relationship between your sentences, like contrast, addition, or opinion. And they can also tell the listener what you're going to say next. For example, if you say in conclusion, well, the listener knows you're going to give a conclusion now. So let's go back to the paragraph again we looked at before, and we'll see if we can make it better and just flow better. So the first thing we can do or add is simply add a because between the first two sentences. So this word because joins the first two sentences and makes them flow much more nicely. Next, we can say however before we say it. Now, when a listener hears you say however, they know that you're going to talk about something different. You're going to talk about a contrast. So this is making it easier for the listener to follow what you're saying. Again, we could add a word between the two sentences here, which is since, to join them together. Since is exactly the same as because. We just use it to talk about a reason. And finally, we can add another discourse marker at the end, not only that. This is a great discourse marker to use when you want to talk about another idea. So we've said not only that, that's talking about what we said before, and then you give another idea. And that idea is sometimes they forget to talk to each other face to face. So now if you read this whole paragraph again, you'll see and you'll notice that it's much easier to listen to and easier to follow, and that's going to improve your fluency score. Let me show you a few more examples of discourse markers and what they do. So here's the first one, from my point of view. If you're listening to me speak and I say from my point of view, what's coming next? What am I going to say next? Well, you're correct. I'm going to give an opinion. Let's look at the next one. In addition to that, if you hear that, what do you think I'm going to say next? Well, I'm going to give you more information or another idea. Conversely, well, if I say conversely, I'm going to talk about something different. Because of that, well, if I say because of that, I'm going to give you a reason or a cause. Moving on to, if you hear that, what comes next? Well, it's going to be a new topic. What about if I say what I mean is? Well, I'm going to explain something to you. So these were just a few basic examples of discourse markers. And if you look at the band descriptors for fluency and coherence, a band 7 requires flexible use of spoken discourse markers. That means you need to use some discourse markers if you want a 7 for your fluency. It's not enough to just be able to speak English. You need to be able to use discourse markers. All right, let's move on to the next one now, which is tip 4. So have a look at this paragraph. Let me read this to you and just think about, why doesn't this sound natural? I am a person who enjoys relaxing at home after work. I do not usually go out during the week because I am often quite tired. It is nice to just watch a movie or read a book in the evening. So why doesn't this sound natural? Well, the issue here is that there are no contractions, and that is tip number 4. Use contractions when you're speaking. If you don't know, a contraction is a shorter form of 2 words joined together with an apostrophe. We use them in speaking to make our English sound more natural and fluent, like saying I'm instead of I am, or don't instead of do not. So let's go back to the example we looked at before, and we'll fix it up. So instead of saying I am, we can say I'm. I'm a person. And note here how we do not say I am a. We say I'm a. I'm a person who... ... Instead of saying do not, we can simply say don't. So I don't usually... ... Instead of saying I am, well, we can say I'm again because I'm often quite tired. For it is, we can say it's. It's nice to just watch... ... A lot of students always ask me, is it okay to use contractions in the speaking test? Well, the answer is 100% yes. It's going to make you sound more natural and more like a native speaker. Here are some more advanced contractions. Could've means could have. Should've means should have. Would've means would have. Might've means might have. Must've means must have. Wouldn't've means would not have. So we've got 3 words as a contraction there. So we've changed 3 words into a contraction there. Shouldn't have, same thing. Should not have, couldn't have, could not have, I'd have, I would have, and finally, there'd have, there would have. Please note, these should only be used in speaking, not writing, okay? Speaking only. Let's move on to tip number 5 now. Have a look at this paragraph here and let me read it for you. And again, think about why doesn't it sound natural? I like to go out with my friends after work, especially to try different kinds of food. We often meet at a restaurant for a nice meal and we talk about our day and share stories. Well, the reason why it doesn't sound natural is because I didn't use any weak forms. And that is tip number 5. Use weak forms. If you don't know, a weak form is when a native speaker pronounces small grammar words very softly so their speech sounds smooth and natural. So instead of saying to or for really clearly, we often say t or f when speaking quickly. Let's go back to the paragraph again and let's fix this up. Instead of saying I like to, we'd say I like to. I like to go out with my friends. I like to. I like to. The next one, especially to try. Especially to try. To try. Note how we do not say especially to try. The to is pronounced very softly and it sounds like a t. Especially to. Next one, of. Kinds of food. Kinds of food. Kinds of. Next one, for. So we often meet at a restaurant for a nice meal. For a nice meal. And finally, the and at the end is changed to an un. So we talk about our day and share stories. It's very, very soft. It's very, very weak. And we don't say and, we say share stories. So one more time. We talk about our day and share stories. The next question is, when do we use weak forms? Well, it's mainly for small grammar words, not important content words like nouns or verbs. So from now on, when you're listening to native speakers, pay attention to how they use weak forms for little unimportant words like of or to. And sometimes they say these words so quickly and so in such a weak way that you can't even hear them or you can almost not hear them. Now, let's go to the next one, the next tip here. Look at this word here. How do you pronounce it? Well, the answer is photographer. Photographer. And that is the next tip. You need to use correct stress, and that includes sentence stress and word stress. Now, if you don't know, stress is when one part of a word is pronounced more strongly, loudly, or clearly than the other parts. Every long word in English has one main stressed syllable or sound, and if you use the wrong stress, it can make the word sound unnatural or even hard to understand for a native English speaker. All right, look at these two words now and try to pronounce them yourself. Well, the first one is pronounced desert. Desert. This is the place with a lot of sand, which is very dry and normally doesn't have any rain. The next one is desert. Desert. So you can see that the pronunciation is exactly the same, the sounds are the same, but the only difference is the stress. In the first one, the stress is on the first syllable or the first sound, desert, desert. On the second one, it swaps. So the stress is on the second sound, dessert, dessert. Let's have a look at a few more. This one here is comfortable. Comfortable. The stress is on the first sound, comfortable. Next one, academic. Academic. Where is the stress here? Well, it's on the dem, academic, academic. In regards to stress, my advice to you is to never guess how to pronounce a word. Even if it looks easy, go to the dictionary and check how it's pronounced and also check for the stress. Never guess. If you use the Cambridge Dictionary, you can see that it provides you with the pronunciation and it also provides you or shows you where the stress is. So you can see where the red arrow is pointing to the apostrophe. That little apostrophe, after that apostrophe, that's where the stress is. Okay, the stress is after the apostrophe. So remember, this word is academic, demic. The stress is on that dem. All right, let's move on to number 7 now. So have a look at these sentences again. Let me quickly read them for you and think about why doesn't it sound natural? I think technology is important. It helps people work faster. It can also be bad because people use it too much. Well, the sentences here are grammatically okay, but they just sound a bit mechanical. They sound a bit flat. There's something that's missing. And the thing that's missing is fillers. This is tip number 7. Use fillers, but only if necessary. A filler is a small word or a phrase we use while thinking to make our speech sound more natural and fluent. They help us to avoid very long pauses and they keep the conversation flowing. So for example, well, you know, or I mean. So if we go back to our example here, we could put a filler at the very start while you're trying to think about the answer. You could say, well, I think technology is important. Then we could also say something like, it helps people work faster. And then finally, maybe we could have one more, which would be, I guess. So it can also be bad, I guess, because people use it too much. Please note, I'm not saying you should use fillers in every sentence. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you can use fillers when you want to sound natural while you're thinking. Okay, while you're thinking. Native speakers use them all the time, and if you use them sometimes, like saying well at the start of your answer, it's going to make you sound more natural rather than just sitting there and saying nothing. So here are some examples of fillers. Let me show you 10 examples. Well, you know, I mean, actually, basically, to be honest, let me think, kind of, sort of, and I guess. Okay, let's move on to number 8 now. So let's look at this paragraph. Let me quickly read it to you. I had a really busy week at work and I felt very tired by Friday. My boss gave me a lot of new tasks and I had to stay late every night. I was very happy when the weekend finally started. There's nothing wrong with this paragraph grammatically, but it can be more interesting. So how could we make this better in regards to the vocabulary? Well, we could add in some idioms. Idioms are a great way to increase your vocabulary score, and that is tip number 8. Use idioms where appropriate. Now, an idiom is a group of words with a special meaning that's different from the individual words. Native speakers use idioms all the time to make their language more natural and colorful, like saying, I'm over the moon, instead of just saying, I'm very happy. Okay, back to our original paragraph. Let's make this much more interesting and add some idioms. The first place we can add an idiom is very tired. We could say running on fumes. This simply means you're extremely tired or you have almost no energy left. It's, just like a car when the fuel tank is empty. For the next one, look at very happy. Well, we could say over the moon, which just means very happy, like I mentioned just before. And it's more than just being a normal happy, it's a much stronger happy. So when it comes to using idioms, I'm not saying you should use them in every single sentence. No, that would sound unnatural and that would sound quite strange. I'm just showing you that using some idioms in your speech is going to improve your vocabulary score and make you sound more natural and colorful in your speech and your speaking. So when you do think about idioms, think of idioms as seasoning, like salt and pepper. They make your language taste better, but if you put too much, well, this can ruin the dish and it can cause problems. So they were 8 tips to sound more like a native English speaker. If you want to learn how to make longer, better answers in the speaking test, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching, take care, and good luck with your studies.